Next, we would like to invite Professor Siu Phan Hong with topic autoimmune, hepatitis, and metabolic associated steatohepatitis.
Thanks for the conference, the very nice arrangement, and it's a great honor for me to be here. This is the third time I come to Vietnam, and I'm talking about liver and the lung. Today I'm going to talk two topics. One is autoimmune hepatitis, and another is steatohepatitis. Both of them are arising more and more cases now because chronic viral hepatitis is declining due to effective treatment. So now I think the liver pathology need to face the new challenge, how to diagnose of these patients. So I'm going to show the diagnostic point today. First is I'm going to talk about the autoimmune hepatitis, how to differentiate them between the viral hepatitis and autoimmune hepatitis. Actually, they can be all the same. So for all the hepatitis diagnosis, you need to have very complete clinical data before you make the diagnosis. And for the steatohepatitis, it's also similar. You need to have very complete background because for many steatohepatitis patients, they also have the autoantibody. So I often receive the biopsy, they say they need to rule out autoimmune hepatitis and turn out to be steatohepatitis because these patients have like fatty liver, obesity, or have hyperlipidemia or DS. And so for the autoimmune hepatitis, I will introduce the scoring system and will be quicker because there's limited of time. And for the steatohepatitis, they also have a scoring system. So if you choose when you make the diagnosis, but sometimes I need to give the both scoring system because today I will show. I don't think I have time to show, but sometimes you found the patient both have steatohepatitis and autoimmune hepatitis, but that is a rare condition. Okay, and this is for the NASH. This is not the first one. Anyway, so they are going to give, and do you have the okay, maybe I can control this. Okay, let's start. So the fatty liver, fatty change of liver covers a wide range of pathology, and also now they have a new name. So used to be saying that NAFL, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and now we change to metabolic or metabolic dysfunction associated steatotic liver disease because in Western countries they don't like use the fat. Fatty, so they think this is not a very good word, so they change to steatotic liver disease. But for the pathology, it's always the same. That you started with the simple steatosis, fatty change, and then go to the steatohepatitis, and finally go to the cirrhosis. And usually you can see that in the textbook they always say start with normal liver and to fatty liver and to cirrhosis, and then this is both sides. You can reverse it, and if you go to steatohepatitis, you can reverse it. But when you become steatohepatitis, it's difficult to reverse. After they become cirrhotic, they are non-reversible. But there are more and more treatment now. Maybe they will become reversible. And so in the textbook, they will told you that you go to normal liver, fatty liver, cirrhotic, and without being cirrhotic and become have HCC development. But I think this idea is challenged now. I think Dr. I also can understand that there are actually more and more, because the overweight patient is increasing worldwide, and so there is actually more fatty liver that without being cirrhotic they become have HCC. So HCC also become an increasing risk for those with fatty liver. And this is a typical pathologic feature that you see they are abundant. And they mainly start from the zone 3 pericentral area. And this is usual simple steatosis, only the fatty change. And for metabolic dysfunction associated with, sometimes use a mass, and has, there's 3 characteristics of fatty change: hepatocyte ballooning without Mallory body and the lobular inflammation. So we were scoring for these 3 items. And the inflammatory mainly in the sinusoid, different from the viral hepatitis. Viral hepatitis we're focusing on portal area and lobular. But for still hepatitis, the portal area is not the primary site. Usually it's in lobular area. And so that's why I say the portal area is no significant information. So the scoring system doesn't score the portal area. So let's introduce the key feature of MAP. These necessary components: steatosis, lobular inflammation, and ballooning. And the other one is fibrosis, glycogenetic. These are all not so important. And usually we don't have time. So the scoring system with now use the Cohen system, and so with NAFL activity score. Even though we use the metabolic associated steatohepatitis, but the scoring is still for the NASH score. And usually start with steatosis, the fatty chain with 5 to 33, 33, 66, and more than 66%. And inflammation is quite simple for the pathology. You see how much is 200 field. And so this is typical one, the 5% and 5 to 32. So because the range is quite big, so the individual bias can be reduced, and the information is like this way, if you a lot, then it's going to higher, and this kind of acidophilic body, and sometimes the Mallory body. This is ballooning. I think ballooning is important, and the inflammation is usually around the central area, zone 3 area, and the ballooning is actually the key pathologic feature, and the score is a none or few or many. And correlation with the NAFL activity score to steatohepatitis, usually they consider after the 5, probable definite, and 3 to 4 uncertain, and less than 2 is not a NASH. But actually the most important part for the NASH is ballooning change. So actually, so this scoring, because when you have a 100% fatty chain, the score is high, but not necessary to have steatohepatitis. You don't really have the ballooning change. So this is a typical representation. As you see, this is the central area, zone 3. You have so many ballooning cells, and even the Mallory body. You can see here the marked ballooning, and even the acidophilic body. And you see the pericellular fibrosis shown by the muscle fragment stain. And so that's for the scoring, and then will be the staging. Staging is also important, especially for clinical trials. Usually they want to select the one with more advanced fibrosis. So there's initial stage 1 with zone 3, perivenous, sinusoidal, pericellular fibrosis. Stage 2 is start from portal, because usually they start from central area, zone 3. And stage 3 become region, and stage 4 cirrhosis. But later on, they have this is around stage 1. But now this is represent that you started with the hepatic vein central area, but the portal tract is intact, and you only have a very mild perivenous fibrosis. But then we have a new NASH cone fibrosis stage, because it's the one drop. So now 1A, 1B, and 1C. 2, 3, 4 is different. It's not changed. But 1A means that it's mild, you need the spatial stain to identify. 1B, you can identify by H&E, and 1C is only portal fibrosis. This is very rare, and textbook always like say it's common thing, it's more common thing in the pediatric patient. But as the pediatric hepatology, pathology in the United States, they say actually they don't really see such kind of condition either. So there is how come pediatrics have portal fibrosis only? Usually we will see the central area first and then go to the portal. And you can see this diagram and see that this is 1A is very mild, and 1B is more prominent, very sinusoidal fibrosis, and 1C is the only portal fibrosis without this one. Actually, I don't really see such kind of condition. Usually they will see both of central vein and the portal tract. And this is a typical case to show that you see there are a lot of inflammation and the fibrosis. You can identify by this spatial stain. And also this one. And actually, you see under the silver stain, you can see this kind of pericellular fibrosis. Some were mild, you don't see them. So this is 1A, but you can see prominent one with 1B. And this is another one. And always see that this actually all these yellow hepatitis is very simple picture. It's quite easy to get consensus. So this for stage 2, you mean that you have both central vein and periportal area together fibrosis. You can see here that usually the portal area you need to have periportal. You see this kind of branching area. And this is stage 3, then becomes region fibrosis. And okay, that is this region. This fundate region, you see this one. But you need to make sure that the portal to central region, not just central to central region. And this time you see the region fibrosis. And then finally stage 4, the cirrhosis. In the past, I rarely see any stage 4 patients, but in recent years they increase. But usually when they have even the stage 4 in steatohepatitis patient, unless it's very advanced, usually clinically the patient doesn't have that cirrhotic late stage appearance, that didn't have failure yet. And so the patient with NASH can have progressive cirrhosis confirmed. But in the past, when they become cirrhotic, and you do the biopsy, they may have lost, because they've been exhausted, it's burnout, so they may not show any fatty change. But you trace the clinical history, they usually have the metabolic syndrome. So now the cryptogenic, in the past, we said the cirrhotic, there may be 30% cryptogenic, and now we think that most of them usually was associated with metabolic syndrome. The cryptogenic cirrhotic, this patient doesn't have alcoholic history, doesn't have viral history or autoimmune, but then we know that the majority was metabolic associated. The instance in Taiwan is not have a good data now, but they were increasing. And the NAS score, and we mentioned that the NAS score, if they were more than 5, we are more confirmed they could be diagnosed as a NASH or a NASH. But they have analyzed to see the consensus. And the higher value has associated with higher level alanine, ALT, and AST. The diagnosis still have an associated feature of metabolic syndrome. Okay. So you see the steatohepatitis, this by review a special panel. They found that when the score is high, they do have the steatohepatitis, but they still have some, with definite steatohepatitis. There's a few cases that only score 2 or 3. So when you have a score of 2 or 3, usually the fatty change is fewer, so the score is not so high. But usually if they have enough the ballooning or have the pericentral fibrosis, I still can diagnose that we have steatohepatitis. So this means that regardless of final molecular diagnosis, definitely as ballooning. So hepatocyte ballooning is very important. And ballooning is an individual feature significantly correlated with clinical feature insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, you know, that is represent you have metabolic syndrome. So I think we want to show some interesting case because steatohepatitis, unlike the viral hepatitis, now doctors usually they can diagnose just by the liver enzyme level. But for steatohepatitis, they don't have correlate so well. You can see from here that they have, they have some fatty chain, some inflammation, but they only have mild pericentral fibrosis. And this is a 42-year-old male. The AST/ALT level is a little bit increased, 100, but they have very high cholesterol and triglyceride and sugar. So they have hyperlipidemia and DM. And the fatty change was 80% and ballooning 0. This is and actually a little bit ballooning, and so see, and so you see this is a little bit information and LT 105 and stage 1A. The score is 4. And the next one is 58-year-old male. You see there's obvious information, but the ALT is only 45. You see, but you see there are a lot of information and prominent fibrosis. And this patient have a DM, HbA1c being 7.3, but he doesn't have hyperlipidemia, and ALT was low. And but the fatty change only 2, ballooning was 2. There are prominent ballooning change and inflammatory 2. So actually NAS score was 6. So this is the definite match. But the clinical data, the ALT doesn't show high. So you cannot evaluate the patient has steatohepatitis or not just by the lab data. And so I actually have a new one. We use the old one. Actually, I want to add one case. That one, the patient is only 29 and 25-year-old, a young man, but his ALT level was up to 843. And that patient had very severe ballooning change. And then very severe ballooning change. So I want to show that when the ALT was very high, you still can understand they may still be the NASH. And so the liver histology remains the central diagnosis method of disease. And in the past we call NAFO, but now there are arguments they now to change to metabolic associated steatohepatitis disease. And I think because liver biopsy is important, so it's important. And this kind of fatty liver patient is all over the whole country. So for pathologists, we need to train a young doctor into how to interpretation this liver biopsy. Yeah. So standardize the diagnosis method of grading and staging in pathology are very important. Yeah. I think that's the last one. Thank you. And our talk next is on autoimmune hepatitis. I think they. Okay.
Thank you for Professor Su Pung. And next presentation, I would like to Dr. Fleming. Thank you for Professor Su Pung Huang for interesting your presentation.
Yeah. And okay. Can you? I will. Not this one. The autoimmune hepatitis is more similar to the, not this one. Should be the, I give you two, I will ask you to talk. Who have the other one? Did I run out of time? Right. Bring out of time, maybe I will speak with you. Come up. Okay, thank you. I will hurry up. So now next I'm going to talk about autoimmune hepatitis. And liver disease can be caused by autoimmune infection, metabolic and cardiovascular conditions, medication and drugs, and also some anatomical issues like structural anomaly. And clinical pathological correlation is very important, as I mentioned. For autoimmune disease, it's characterized by inflammatory liver histology, and they need to have circulating antibody and increased level IgG in the absence of known etiology. For autoimmune hepatitis, you need to exclude other possibilities. And two types of first is antisense antibody or antibody. And some was like the other one, the AI type 2. But majority we saw is AI first type 1. I think that, okay. And so, first, before we score, similar to CRP, for the autoimmune hepatitis, you need to learn about the histology activity index score for first. And this is very important because now more and more for liver, because just an inflammatory disease, if you don't have a scoring system, different pathology may give a very different interpretation. So you need to now it's a grading and station. And so I think this can shift the normal histology, the portal tract to be like this, and central vein to be similar. And now the most popular one is ESHAC, HI score. In the past, the Nobel score has many modifications. They use the interface, periportal, conference necrosis, and focal necrosis, and the focal inflammation. And the first one is the periportal that we use called interface activity, absent, mild, and moderate, more involved, more, and this one be like a continuous, the interface continuous. So, and the conference, it used to be like bridging necrosis, and you see that this central vein, there's a little bit information, and there's more information. You see this necrosis hemorrhage, and this one you see the moving here. And this is one, the bridging necrosis is scoring like here. You can see the necrosis from here, and this 10S, the whole liver globule become absent. They all necrotic. So, and the focal necrosis, the absent, and the occasional one foci, and then much more multiple extraophidic body, and increasingly, and more. So you count it because it's all counting on the how much objective. So I feel even they look complicated, but easier to get consensus between different pathologies. And the portal information also is simple. There's no information, there's mild information, moderate, and there's more. And it depends on how much area you have. So the ESHAC station is fibrosis architecture. And there are also people using the Metabia, that's in the 1, 2, 3, 4. So I like the ESHAC, they have a more detailed 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 is like here. And 3 region fibrosis will be 2. And the frequent region fibrosis in Nordella metavia will be 3. And the cirrhosis in D-shape, there will be like, and there's 5. And the early cirrhosis and the 4. But metavia they only, so they couldn't differentiate 5 or 6. So this typical representative is normal. There is no photofibrosis, and this you can see this kind of fibrosis spikes coming out. And then you see this one was we shared with before. There are frequent region fibrosis, and this becomes cirrhotic. See, there are nodule formation. Well, so you have those big fibrous nodules, and each has score 6. So, but for the AIH, first you need to know the score. But that AIH is a very diverse, diverse features, and because they can be in the acute AIH is very typical, have very severe inflammation. By chronic AIH, they can be completely the same with the chronic viral hepatitis. So it's very challenging. And so they have a clinical, they have a diagnostic point for the AIH. That is from the clinical and the pathology. For the pathology, we need to know when you score it as a typical one. A typical one would be 2, and the compatible would be 1. And if you have, so this is for pathology, and this is for clinical data. It's very interesting. So we will be important part in the 1 score or 2 score. And also the typical one, and this is all the classification in 2008. The typical one, you need to have interface and lymphocytic and lymphoplasm infiltration in portal tract, staging the lobule, and the anterior polycystic and photothyroid cell formation, and compatible is that any chronic hepatitis possible. A typical, defect. Another diagnosis, you will exclude the possibility. So I think AI should exclude other etiology first. So, but because there are so many arguments, so in 2022 they have a new panelists to get a new consensus. So now they don't like to use a typical, they use likely and possible and unlikely. So the likely would be like photo, if they are heavy lymphoplasma cell infiltration, it's always very supportive, plus you have interface and lobular or absence of other diversity. For example, if this have a chronic viral hepatitis, you will favor chronic viral hepatitis. And if this is a possible, it's like, you don't have interface, you don't have other features like that. So, but the most important part is that you have a lot of lymphoplasma cell have interface. It always suggests AI with other etiology can be excluded. So this is a diagram to show that if you have, interface, you have a lot of lobular information, a lot of plasma cell. This all very suggests AIH. So if you don't have other etiology, likely or possible. But if you have a case that you doesn't have interface or lobular activity is mild or plasma cells is mild, so if you have no other disease possible, if the other disease is unlikely, so it's AIH. So when you diagnose hepatitis B, you always need to have very complete clinical data to make the final diagnosis. You need to have good connection, discussion with the hepatology. That's why I'm doing everywhere, always. So it's a lobular hepatitis. Lobular usually, as long as it's very severe, it's typical. So that's like when you say lobular, a lot of information. If there's very few lobular information. But I want to mention that in a chronic AIH, they may be in a more quiet condition. So in a chronic autoimmune hepatitis, they may have very mild inflammatory activity, but usually they have some kind of fibrosis. So I want to show some representative case, or including some pediatric. For this one, it's a 9-year-old female. It's a very high ALT, 1,148. And you see they have a very high IgG, ANA is positive. So it's very typical one. You have a high IgG and a high liver enzyme level, and you see the bilirubin actually is low, and you can see there's very big photo information, interface, and the scoring was like you have HI score. I forgot to put the HI score. They were very high HI score as 13. Because they have region closures up to 13. And also we stand for CD138 for plasma cell. You can see a lot of positive cell. And I also like to use the CDA. When CDA was so strong, I would suggest the clinical doctor to use the prednisone, the steroid, and usually they will respond well. And you see the patient could respond to steroid treatment. So this is kind of typical AI with very strong information activity. And this patient, they were negative for B or C hepatitis. And this another case was typical. You see again the photo information strong, and ALT was 268, and the IgG also very high, ANA also high. But this one has a bioduct injury. See? And also the CDA very strong, and CD138 also very strong. The grading score is 8. They didn't have a strong region necrosis, they only 8. And by the stage was 3 already. This is only 50-year-old stage 3 region fibrosis. But also very good response to treatment. Because they are bioduct injuries, so they also need the URSO treatment. And this is another case, that 90-year-old male. You see the ALT level was not high, gamma GT was very high, and the IgG was high, 1,040, and ANA, AMA was both negative. But in the histology first, it was cirrhotic, you see many nodule formation, and also they have the positive bioduct and ballooning of liver cells. On this ballooning of liver cell, you see the positive copper stain, and the CK7, you see there's loss of the bioduct. There's no bioduct here. So they have a positive bioduct injury, but they also have copper deposition. So this is for loss of bioduct and copper deposition is compared with primary biliary cholangitis. But you see, because it has very high IgG level, even though N is negative, so we think that inflammatory activity is also high. So we consider it an overlapping syndrome with both PBC and AI. So you see the grading was 6. And they respond to steroid and the USO. So for the PBC, you treat it USO and the AIT. Because for this kind of patient, if you only PBC with URSO treatment, they won't improve. The liver enzymes and will not improve. But this one, actually, the ALT was 43 only. But you see the IgG were very high. So we favor that have both of them. Okay. And this is another case, the 16-year-old male. The ALT was quite high, and gamma GD very high, 2035, L-P. So the L-P and gamma GD high, suggest their bioduct problem. The bilirubin not much, but used to be have hyperbilirubinemia. IgG is a little bit high, not very high. IgG 0.3, AMA negative, but the most important part, the image shows the stenosis main bioduct. So if you have stenosis of main bioduct, you will come to the diagnosis of primary sclerosing cholangitis. However, in the pathology, actually, I see so many ductular proliferation. The interlobular bioduct is absent. You see here, and then cirrhosis. And the copper stain was strongly positive. Actually, for this biopsy, it's very similar to primary biliary cholangitis, but because they have the stenosis of main bioduct, so it will be a primary sclerosing cholangitis. I want to show these cases because some of the features were similar, so you need to exclude other etiology. So even for this one, very similar PBC, it will become a PSC. And this case doesn't have AMA positive, but it's negative. But actually, I think the previous one, this is we also that the AMA was negative, but we still diagnosed PBC because some of the AMA detection was not very sensitive. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for Professor Siêu Wong Quang for two interesting presentation.